The delivery room smelled of antiseptic and soft baby powder as Ethan Hayes cradled his newborn daughter, Ava, for the first time. His hands trembled with a mix of fear and overwhelming love, and tears streamed down his face as the tiny baby curled her fingers around his thumb. Nurses and doctors moved around them with practiced routine, but to Ethan the world had gone completely still, just him and his daughter. Lily lay back on the bed, exhausted but smiling faintly, refusing to meet Ethan's adoring gaze for more than a second. When the birth certificate arrived, Ethan proudly signed his name without hesitation. A relative, trying to make small talk, casually mentioned how quick this pregnancy happened, considering Ethan had been abroad until 8 months ago. The room went quiet for a split second before Ethan laughed it off, not realizing a dangerous thought had just been planted in his mind. Back home, the excitement of the birth faded faster than Ethan expected. Late at night, warm lullabies and soft cries turned into silent distance. Lily barely spoke, and when she did, her voice felt like she was miles away even though she was right beside him. The baby slept in a cradle next to their bed, but Lily spent most of the night awake, wide-eyed and nervous. One evening, Ethan walked in and found her sitting on the bathroom floor, phone clutched to her chest as if it were life support. Her makeup was smudged from crying. When he gently reached for her hand, she pulled back and whispered, "You deserve better than me." Ethan froze. He had heard postpartum fear could be brutal, so instead of pushing, he hugged her tightly. He promised himself that night that he would protect their family, no matter what. Just when life started to feel normal again, diapers, bottle warmers, and Ethan humming lullabies, the ordinary happiness shattered. While rocking Ava to sleep on the couch, Ethan heard his phone buzz. Expecting congratulations or family check-ins, he smiled as he unlocked the screen. But his breath stopped when he read the message, "Get a DNA test before you ruin your life." His pulse hammered. He stared at the words, reading them again and again, unable to blink. His first instinct was to delete it, pretend he never saw it, but something inside him twisted. Lily walked past him at that very moment, and when she saw the expression on his face, she froze. Ethan didn't speak, but she instantly turned pale, as if she knew exactly what message he had received. The room felt suddenly cold. The hook had landed. Nothing would ever be the same. Storms came. Ethan Hayes grew up in a house where silence was louder than screaming. His father walked out when he was 6, leaving him and his mother to survive alone. He remembers the nights when his mother skipped dinner so he could eat, the days she worked 2 jobs but still smiled when she came home, pretending everything was fine. From childhood, Ethan promised himself one thing: he would never become the kind of man who leaves. Every achievement he chased, every hour he worked, came from the fear of repeating his father's mistakes. So when he held Ava, the very symbol of the family he dreamed of, he swore to protect her with everything he had. His identity, self-worth, and future were tied to fatherhood. If that foundation ever cracked, it wouldn't just hurt him, it would destroy the version of himself he spent his whole life trying to build. Lily Rose Parker grew up in a different kind of abandonment, one you couldn't see. Her father never left physically, but emotionally he was a ghost. Achievement was the only currency he understood, affection was earned, never given freely. Lily learned early that love must be performed for, that to be noticed she had to be perfect, pretty, pleasing. When she met Ethan in college, she wasn't drawn only to his kindness, she was drawn to his stability, the way he listened, the way he valued her without demanding anything in return. But deep down, she feared she didn't deserve that kind of love. Instead of healing, she clung. The more Ethan cared, the more terrified she became of losing him, and the more she sabotaged everything good around her. Her past didn't make her cruel, it made her broken in places she never learned to repair. Ethan and Lily's love was real, but it was built on fragile foundations neither of them recognized soon enough. They met in college, Ethan the quiet, hardworking IT student who stayed late in the computer lab, and Lily the radiant yet wounded girl who seemed bright enough to light up any room. Their connection was passionate, fast, and comforting because they filled each other's voids. Ethan offered safety, Lily offered affection. But the very things that attracted them eventually became their weaknesses. Ethan buried himself in work to provide a better future, believing sacrifice meant love. Lily saw his long hours not as dedication but as abandonment, a repeat of her father's emotional absence. During pregnancy, she felt more alone than ever, craving validation, terrified she wasn't enough. Ethan wanted to break generational pain, Lily wanted love that never left. Even if fear pushed her toward destruction, the message kept echoing in Ethan's mind, no matter how hard he tried to bury it: get a DNA test before you ruin your life. For days he convinced himself it was just a cruel prank, someone jealous of his happiness, someone trying to break his family apart. But every time he looked at Ava, a whisper of doubt crept in. Did she have his eyes? His smile? His features? One night, while Lily slept in the next room with Ava's tiny hand wrapped around her finger, Ethan sat in the glow of his laptop, heart pounding. He didn't want to prove Lily wrong, he wanted to prove himself wrong. He wanted the test to end the poison of suspicion so he could breathe again. With trembling fingers, he placed the order, staring at the confirmation page with a sickening mix of guilt and desperation. He prayed it would all come back normal. Weeks passed in slow motion. Ethan forced himself to act normal. He cooked, changed diapers, rocked Ava to sleep, and kissed Lily goodnight like nothing was wrong. But inside, he was unraveling stitch by stitch. The day the envelope arrived, it felt heavy enough to crush him. His hands shook as he tore it open, desperate for relief, terrified of the truth. Lines of text blurred until his eyes stopped on the numbers. Probability of paternity, 0%. Something inside him fractured with a clean, cold snap. He didn't scream or throw anything. Rage would have been easier. Instead, he simply collapsed into a chair, holding the paper loosely as Ava slept in her crib inches away, breathing softly, trusting the world completely. His nightmare wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. Everything he had feared since childhood, betrayal, abandonment, repeating his father's story, had become real in a single sentence. When Lily entered the room, she didn't need to ask what happened. One look at the opened envelope on the floor, and her knees went weak. She reached for the crib as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. For a moment, there was no shouting, no accusations, just a silence so sharp it felt like glass. Lily's voice trembled as she whispered, "Please don't leave her. She needs you." "Not me, her." Ethan looked up, eyes red, voice barely audible. "Then tell me the truth." His words weren't fueled by anger, but by a man begging not to become what he feared, another disappearing father. Lily's face crumpled, guilt and terror battling inside her. She opened her mouth to speak, and for the first time Ethan wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. The moment the test arrived, their world shattered. Nothing could go back to before. Lily didn't try to deny it. The moment Ethan asked for the truth, something inside her collapsed and the confession poured out, not loudly, not defensively, but in a whisper so broken it barely sounded human. She explained the affair happened during Ethan's work assignment abroad, when she felt abandoned, unwanted, and terrified that history was repeating, another father leaving, another child growing up emotionally starved. Her coworker, Scott, had stepped in with attention and flattery, and she mistook validation for love. Ethan listened, expression dead and silent, until she said the part that destroyed him: he didn't want the baby. Rage pulsed through Ethan, not at the cheating, but at being unknowingly forced to carry another man's responsibility. He wasn't just betrayed, he was used. And yet, in the crib beside him, Ava slept, innocent. And Ethan's heart was trapped between fury and love that wouldn't die. Days turned into quiet warfare. Ethan moved into the guest room, unable to sleep beside Lily, yet unable to leave the house because the thought of abandoning Ava felt like ripping out his ribs. He changed diapers, fed her bottles, and held her through the night, only now, every small moment was a knife twisting deeper. Lily became a ghost, hovering in the hallway, too afraid to speak, too terrified to leave. Guilt swallowed her whole, panic attacks stole her breath, she cried silently outside the guest room door but never knocked. Relatives eventually learned the truth, and the phone calls came, judgment, whispers, disappointment. Ethan felt humiliated, like his private pain had become public entertainment. He started researching custody laws, weighing whether he had any legal rights at all, because loving Ava didn't give him permission to claim her. Every option hurt. Every path forward broke something. One night, Lily finally shattered. She entered the guest room with shaking hands, eyes swollen, barely able to speak. "The DNA test didn't just reveal the father, it revealed who I really am," she choked out, collapsing to the floor. She sobbed uncontrollably, confessing she hated herself, hated her weakness, hated that she had destroyed the one good thing in her life. Ethan wanted to stay cold, unmoved, but watching her unravel wasn't satisfying, it was painful. For the first time, he saw not a villain, but a damaged person drowning in guilt and fear. Still, empathy wasn't forgiveness. He told her softly but firmly that understanding her pain didn't erase his own. He wasn't ready to leave, but he wasn't ready to heal either. The only thing he knew for certain was Ava. Everything else, marriage, trust, love, was a question with no answer yet. Driven by desperation rather than hope, Lily finally reached out to Scott, the man she once believed cared for her, the man whose child she carried. It wasn't for reconciliation, she just wanted him to acknowledge Ava, to take responsibility for the life he helped create. But Scott's response was ice cold. He denied everything, called her unstable, accused her of trying to trap him, and threatened legal action if she ever contacted him again. The call ended with a click that echoed louder than any scream. Something inside Lily broke beyond repair. All the guilt she'd been carrying now turned inward, and her mind convinced her that everyone, Ethan, Ava, the world, would be better off without her. Over the next days she stopped eating, stopped speaking, and stared at Ava like she didn't deserve to hold her. Ethan watched helplessly, afraid that this wasn't guilt anymore, it was collapse. The night she disappeared, Ethan knew instantly something was wrong. Ava was asleep, the house too quiet, and on the kitchen table sat a folded letter shaking in the breeze from an open window. The words nearly stopped his heart. Ava deserves a family that isn't built on my mistakes. I'm the problem, not you. Ethan raced through empty streets until he found her on a pedestrian bridge, clutching the railing, tears streaming, shoulders trembling. She looked smaller than he had ever seen her. When she heard his footsteps, she didn't turn, she just whispered, I always ruin everything. I'm poison. Ethan's chest ached, but not with anger, with grief. He stood beside her, slowly, cautiously. You don't have to disappear to fix this, he said gently. You have to face it. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but a lifeline. And she grabbed it before she slipped too far. They returned home in silence, Lily exhausted from crying, Ethan holding Ava with protective arms that felt stronger than ever before. There were no dramatic promises, no instant healing. Just reality. They sat across from each other at the dining table, broken in different ways but holding on to one shared truth: Ava deserved safety. Lily admitted through shaking breaths that she couldn't be the mother Ava needed right now, not until she fixed the darkness inside her. Ethan made his choice without hesitation. He would fight for custody, not to hurt Lily, not to punish her, but to ensure Ava grew up loved, stable, and protected. Lily nodded painfully, agreeing to therapy and time apart, not out of surrender but acceptance. This wasn't the destruction of their family, it was the beginning of rebuilding it honestly, even if the pieces no longer fit the way they used to. Therapy was not a miracle cure, it was a battlefield. Lily walked into her first session trembling, expecting judgment, but instead found a space where she could finally speak the truth she had spent her whole life running from. Week after week, she dug through the wounds of her childhood, the silence of an emotionally absent father, the desperation for validation, and the belief that love would always leave. She didn't justify her mistakes, she confronted them. There were days she left the clinic sobbing, days she felt proud, and days she almost quit. But slowly, she stopped defining herself by her worst moment. She learned boundaries, forgiveness, and self-respect. The guilt didn't disappear, it transformed, no longer a weapon, but a reminder of who she never wanted to be again. Lily began rebuilding not for Ethan, not for approval, but for herself, and for the daughter she wanted to return to as a whole woman. Signing custody papers could have been a victory, but Ethan never treated it like one. Lily handed him full guardianship not because she was defeated, but because she loved Ava enough to step back until she was stable. Ethan honored that trust with everything he had. He learned to braid hair, read bedtime stories in silly voices, show up for school projects and fevers and nightmares, all the things he wished someone had done for him. He wasn't perfect, but he was present, and that made all the difference. Every milestone, first steps, first missing tooth, first school day, became a small triumph against his childhood fears. He wasn't raising Ava to prove Lily wrong or to prove himself right. He was raising Ava to break the cycle. And every time she ran into his arms, he knew he had already succeeded. Healing didn't mean returning to the past, it meant building something new. Lily didn't force her way back into the home she once shared with Ethan. She chose to earn her place in Ava's life slowly, visit by visit, with stability and self-respect guiding her instead of shame. Supervised meetings eventually turned into park outings, and Ava began to know her mother not through chaos, but through presence. Ethan and Lily didn't become lovers again, they became something better, two adults who shared responsibility rather than pain. They didn't erase what happened, but they refused to let it define the rest of their lives. Ava grew surrounded not by conflict, but by two people who fought their demons so she wouldn't inherit them. Their healing was not dramatic, it was consistent, intentional, and quiet. And sometimes that is the strongest form of love. 5 years had passed, yet Ethan still felt the same nervous excitement sitting in the front row of the kindergarten auditorium, clutching the folded program in his hands. The tiny stage glittered with paper stars and cardboard planets, and children in homemade costumes whispered and waved to their parents. Then the door opened, Lily stepped in. Not fragile, not broken, but calm, healthier. Her hair was neatly tied back, her smile uncertain but warm, and her eyes searched the room until they found Ethan. For a heartbeat, time froze. There was no past, no accusations, no wounds, just two people connected forever by the child they loved. The lights dimmed, and the curtains opened to reveal Ava, tiny astronaut helmet bobbing as she searched the audience. When she spotted him, her entire face lit up, she waved wildly, and Ethan's heart melted. He realized that every storm, every scar, had led to this moment. After the performance, children spilled off the stage and rushed toward their families. Ava sprinted straight into Ethan's arms, laughing as he lifted her high, spinning her in the air. Her joy was pure, untouched by the history that forged it. Then she spotted Lily and ran to her too, throwing her small arms around her mother's neck. Lily held her gently, face buried in Ava's hair as if she were inhaling gratitude. What made the moment powerful wasn't perfection, it was simplicity. No one pretended the past didn't happen, yet the love between them wasn't broken anymore. It had been rebuilt on honesty, boundaries, and healing. Ethan stood beside them, not as a husband, not as a romantic partner, but as a father who chose peace over bitterness. For the first time in years, the three of them stood together without pain driving the moment. Outside, the sun was setting, painting gold across the school courtyard. Parents and kids scattered around them, but everything felt quiet. As Ava skipped ahead, Lily turned to Ethan with a trembling smile. "You saved her, and you saved me too," she whispered, not seeking forgiveness, just acknowledging the truth. Ethan looked at her, eyes gentle but steady. "No," he said softly. "We saved ourselves. For her." It wasn't a Hollywood ending. They weren't together again. But they were no longer broken. Lily walked toward her car, waving to Ava. Ethan bent down and took his daughter's hand. They walked toward the parking lot, not a perfect family, but a healed one. The world had tried to define them by betrayal and pain, yet love, not romance, but love, had been stronger. And that quiet victory became the story Ava would grow up knowing.